Welcome to Top 5, a show where we count things down from number 5 all the way to number 1. This week on the show, interesting, not a topic I would have picked only because I think everyone knows everything that's already going to be on my list. So my list is very boring, but it's this week, it's the Top 5 Summer Blockbusters. Now keep in mind, the idea of a summer blockbuster didn't occur until 1975 with the release of a little movie called Jaws. And so basically any summer blockbuster after that, kind of fair game. I mean, that's what, 50 years, 49 years since then, or I guess it's probably exactly 50 now. But yeah, Top 5 Summer Blockbusters. Rodrigo, what do you have for number 5?
My number 5 is the most recent blockbuster on my list. It is Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, that's a good one. I really thought about that. I was thinking about that because that is a very good movie, and it's very enjoyable.
This movie's in here as my number 5 because I mean it absolutely deserves its reputation as a blockbuster. Marvel Studios executed the arc into Avengers Endgame perfectly. They deserve all the accolades. I don't know if they've since had as big of a hit or as much faith from their fans since then, but they really stuck the landing with Avengers Endgame. Like, it is perhaps as a curse itself, it feels like the culmination of the MCU.
Yeah. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, on the day we're recording this, Marvel just released their Fantastic Four movie, and Rodrigo is saying, I don't think anything after this is ever
I mean, they might. I liked Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
I liked the Marvels. Like a lot of the things that people are like, but Marvel's just not good as it used to be. Like a lot of I like Multiverse of Madness. Like I liked a lot of those movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on board for the Fantastic Four, but I also think that Marvel again just pulled off too good an ending, and people feel like this is like the second season of a show that's just not as good as the first.
Yeah. No, I get you. I get exactly where you're coming from. In fact, my number 5 is also the newest blockbuster on my list. It was the summer of whatever year it was. And I remember standing outside in the sweltering heat with throngs of other people who are waiting to go and see the earth get blowed up real good. I am, of course, talking about Independence Day. The fact that they have a huge cast, right? Like everybody is in this movie. The big special effects, so many of them practical effects, like blowing up the White House, blowing up the monuments. Really big practical effects. Just a big spectacle of a movie. The only problem is I think one of the things about it is if you look at it today, it does feel very jingoistic, right? It's very USA. Everybody, when the president of the United States is in the movie standing up, this will be our Independence Day. The theater erupts. People are having a blast with this movie. Welcome to Earth, all that good stuff. Independence Day, my number 5, it is a really fun, maybe it doesn't hold up as well movie today, but it's certainly in whatever year it came out of that July 4th weekend, it was definitely a summer blockbuster.
Wasn't it 2001?
No. It was like 96, 97, something like that. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because I was in Atlanta at the time for that. So, Matthew, what do you have on your number 5?
So here's the thing. I knew that you were going to say anything before Jaws is not good, everything after Jaws. So I went online and I'm like, hey, is this a blockbuster? Is this a blockbuster? And the earliest one that I found
would be Jaws.
I loved.
Oh, okay.
That I loved after Jaws. But eliminating Star Wars for an important reason, which we'll get to somewhere in a minute, was a 1978 film starring John Landis, featuring a Ghostbuster and featuring the guy who was the Slimer before he was a ghost, featuring a lot of really impressive actors like Donald Sutherland and Peter Riegert, and guys who would grow up to be stuff, and also the guy who played the stork. And of course, I'm referring to 1978 National Lampoon's Animal House, which apparently made 146 million
it made a ton of
on
money.
A $3 budget.
I have seen it. I have seen it listed in when people list like their top 100 summer blockbusters. Animal House usually falls right in the top 25 of most people's summer blockbuster list,
and with good reason. Like so many films of the era, and specifically anything related to, I don't want to say teen, but kind of college debauchery, that whole like 18 to 25-year-old craziness, a lot of it has not aged well. A lot of the humor is way over the top. And as racist movies from the 70s go, it at least tries to couch its racism in a way that feels like they're not punching down as hard, because you have the whole moment that's set in an all black bar, kind of a speakeasy or a roadhouse, and the characters, the people of color, have the upper hand the whole time, and the idiot college boys realize just how foolish and how far out of their depth they are. So you do have moments where a man walks up and says in a deep voice, "Do you mind if we dance with your dates?" But it doesn't feel as incredibly racist as other movies of the same time period. But it also does have an incredibly charismatic cast. There is not a person in this movie who is not hilarious in what they're doing. Even Dean Wormer, the most serious man in the world, is so funny and gets off the best one-liner I can think of. I like to use it as a model for my life. Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son. So I figured I'd pick one and stick with it. But if you ever wanted to look back and say, hey, where did the American Graffiti ending come from? It comes from here. National Lampoon's Animal House. And of course, Senator and Mrs. John Blutarsky of Washington, D.C. One of my number 5 favorite summer blockbuster film.
All right. It is time for our number 4s. Rodrigo, what do you have for your number 4?
My number 4 is a movie that came out in the 90s. There's a few of those in here because that's when I was a kid. And it is something that, like, at the time, the special effects were so good that when I saw a preview for it, I thought that it was an actual park with actual dinosaurs that they actually had, like, cloned. For about a day until I, started looking into it, and then I was like, "Oh, it's a movie." I wasn't even that disappointed. I was like, "Oh, it's a movie. Oh, I want to see that movie." And that's, of course, Jurassic Park, 1993. Jurassic Park is kind of an achievement in special effects in that they still look pretty good, and they still look pretty good because for 2 reasons. One, they're used sparingly and intelligently, right? They use the CGI in shots where it's going to look good and you don't have the ability to get in real close and scrutinize it. They use practical effects and puppets and stuff in, like, the times that they have to interact with humans. And so for that reason, it still looks really good. The second reason is that special effects kind of peaked like 5 or 6 years later and have been in a steady decline since. Not because computer technology has gotten worse or because there aren't, like, real actual effing artists out there in the special effects game, but because companies have, like, devalued the special effects company as a source of pride and artistry. and everybody gets fired. Everybody who
man.
made Life of Pi got fired.
We are going to have a conversation, maybe in the Major Spoilers podcast pre-show that we released earlier this week, ladies and gentlemen, about special effects. And I've got a very controversial thought about that you can listen to on the Major Spoilers podcast pre-show, only on our Patreon page, patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Yeah, it's pretty controversial. Rodrigo, my number 4, everything you said about Jurassic Park, because Jurassic Park was on my almost rants. Everything you said about Jurassic Park, we're limiting our exposure to the dinosaurs. When we need to get in close, we'll do some practicals, but we're really focusing on the story of 3 men in a boat. This is the oldest summer blockbuster on my list, Jaws. And when you think about everything that made Jurassic Park work, those were the hard lessons that Steven Spielberg had to learn when he was making Jaws. I really want to use all the stuff that we shot of the shark because it was so damn hard to get the shot of the shark. And the editor basically saying, no. Less is more, less is more, less is more. And I think that has helped, for the most part, Steven Spielberg with his directing with big special effect type movies. But Jaws is a really great story, not a great adaptation of the source material, but still a very fascinating movie. And I think that if you have not seen Jaws, all the way from 1975, if you have not seen Jaws, then you probably ought to watch it, because I think you will see a lot of parallels about things that are going on today. We must allow capitalism to work, even if it does mean the deaths of hundreds of people. That's just one of the stories. And, camaraderie and, shooting stars. And of course, stay out of the water, because that's where the sharks are. My number 4, Jaws. Matthew, what do you have for your number 4?
My number 4 was actually almost Jaws. And I pushed it from the list for 2 reasons. One, I knew you'd get to it. But more importantly, I said to myself, is this a list of movies that I feel are important, or is this a list of blockbuster movies that I personally love and love and love? And so I said to myself, yes, I must love them. And then I said to myself, but they can't all be from 1986. It's that old question. Was it a really great movie, or did it just come out when you were 15?
Yeah, and that was 97 through 99 for me. I specifically had to go in and remove a few.
Yep, and I had to do that too. And so in order to avoid all of my movies being from 1986, my number 4 is The Lost Boys from 1987, directed by Joel Schumacher, and featuring both Corys, featuring Jamie Gertz at the height of her Jamie Gertzitude, featuring Kiefer Sutherland in one of the first things I can remember him really Kiefering it up, and of course, my eternal crush, Diane Wiest. I don't know why I love Diane Wiest. I feel like it's probably because when I was 14 or 15, she was playing the sexy mom roles in like 5 different movies. That's an entirely different discussion between me and my psychoanalyst. But here's the thing. If you go to Santa Carla, remember 2 important things. One, that second shelf is where Grandpa keeps his root beer and his cakes. Do not steal them. And 2, you'll never learn to deal with all the damn vampires. So, is it the greatest movie of 1987? Sure. But more importantly, it's an incredibly charismatic movie, and it gets by with a lot of, hey, here's some great, cool shots that are happening with some music and some things that aren't ever really explained, that don't necessarily always make linear, coherent sense, but within the dream logic of that movie, make perfect sense. And of course, it does feature a man exploding after being impaled by a sharpened fence post of a man who looks just like Art Carney crashing through the front of the house in a Jeep, like you do. If you have never seen The Lost Boys, congratulations, you're probably under 40. But you might want to give it a shot. It's a pretty good movie. And again, on the blockbuster rules, made like 5 times its budget. And the budget was like $9 million, which from 87 to now, I think $9 million in 2025 is the equivalent of like $17.50. I don't remember. I'd have to do the math. But good movie. funny horror movie. Joel Schumacher.
Jamie Gertz, a little known fact, one of the richest actors in the world.
No way, really?
Yeah, net worth of $3 billion. She owns the Atlanta basketball team, the Hawks. She is wealthier than Brad Pitt and George Clooney combined. She is. She I think she's even richer than Tom Cruise. So yes.
How does Jamie make that much money?
Well, so the easy answer is not from acting.
Hey, she was in Square Pegs.
It's the same answer that Arnold Schwarzenegger will give you, is he didn't make any of his money from acting. That was his doorway to get the money that he needed for all the other things, including buying up most of Atlanta before it expanded. Arnold Schwarzenegger made all of his money from real estate. And I'm pretty sure that's where she made most of her money as well. She and her husband in real estate. But yeah, $3 billion net worth for a girl who has maybe an actress who has maybe 10 lines in the entire movie. All right, Rodrigo, we are into our number threes. What do you have for your number three?
My number three is a movie that has spawned multiple sequels. One of them okay, the rest not great. The year is 1997, and once again, it is time for Will Smith to save the world. I'm talking about Men in Black, a movie that did very well. Back in those days, you couldn't, a bet against Will Smith was foolish. Also starring Tommy Lee Jones. It's like a great classic odd couple situation. Again, a movie in which the special effects are very good because they were used intelligently, right? This movie calls for a lot of special effects. There's a lot of practical effects. There's plenty of CGI. And most of the time, everything looks good because they're using each where it makes sense to use them, leaving you with like a fantastic little action comedy.
Yeah, no, that's a great movie. You're right. It did spawn a lot of sequels, but for what it was, again, you're thinking Independence Day, Men in Black based on a comic book, by the way, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
It seemed like whatever was going on in the late 90s, the rise of Art Bell, the introduction of Alex Jones, just conspiracy theories popping up everywhere, especially when it comes to aliens are among us and they're going to get us.
Yeah. The National Enquirer was pretty huge at this time. You could actually find the Enquirer at your supermarket.
Yeah.
Like along with like Cosmo or whatever else.
Weekly World News. Yeah. All that stuff. Yeah. Aliens brings me to my number three. Steven Spielberg is like, I made Jaws. And George Lucas said, well, I think you should hold my room temperature tepid water and stand aside so I can make a Star Wars. And yes, George Lucas indeed did make a Star Wars in 1977. And it at the time, I think people would say, oh, no, this is what we mean when we talk about summer blockbusters. This thing was insane the year that it came out. I remember seeing it at the drive-in theater. It was great. It was altering for so many people on so many different levels. And even today, things that happened in the Star Wars movies resonate and are happening right before our eyes. Star Wars, Episode 4, A New Hope, whatever you want to call it. My number 3, Summer Blockbuster. Matthew, your number 3, please.
I always want to call it Star Wars. So my number 3, and again, I'm trying very hard not to say over and over, my movie comes from the year 1986, because I feel like that kind of gets us into like a little bit of a...
if you think about it, Summer Blockbusters running from basically May until August, you've got more than 5 weeks there. So all of your Summer Blockbuster movies could come from 1986. And if you look at the movies released in 1986, there are a lot on that list that are definitely Summer Blockbusters. But I swear to God, if you say Howard the Duck, I'm going to punch you in the face and you will never be on this show again.
The Fly. Perhaps the second greatest Jeff Goldblum character ever created after Jeff Goldblum. The Fly, which is a movie that made like $60 million on a $9 million budget, is terrifying, but also funny and charming, and God help us, sexy. And it takes two people who I've always thought of as more of like character actors in Goldblum and Gina Davis, who somewhere in an alternate universe, there is a reality where Gina Davis became the biggest thing in the entire world and is worth $300 billion and owns the Atlanta Hawks. But man, this movie will mess you up. First of all, it is directed by David Cronenberg. David Cronenberg gave us Eraserhead, or as I like to call it, David Cronenberg gave me nightmares from the age of 13 to the age of 26. And the film opens with this just quiet, lovely moment. But you have to remember that tagline, be afraid, be very afraid. There is a sequel. The sequel features Eric Stoltz. It's not bad. It's the same movie featuring Eric Stoltz, but it's not bad. But if you get a chance to sit down and watch The Fly, let's say you have an extra hour and 36 minutes, I want you to just sit and understand that a blockbuster film, a movie that comes out and just whams people, doesn't necessarily have to be exploding giant robots from the planet Cybertonishan. It can be something that is more psychological, that's more personal, that's more kind of pseudoscientific. I don't know if there's any actual science in this movie, but there's an explanation of teleportation and what they have to do to make the teleporter work that is just incredible, just amazing. And of course, it does feature a lot of shirtless Jeff Goldblum, if you're into that. In 1986, shirtless Jeff Goldblum would have been like 26, 27, I think. He would have been 36. Okay, so he's in his prime. He's a young man. He's doing his thing. Now he's like 105. Still one of the most charming men in the world. But if you ever wanted to see the thing that happens after he looks in the camera and says, "How does Brundlefly eat?" First of all, no, you don't. But second of all, watch the movie. It's a really good movie. My number 3, Summer Blockbuster.
Quick correction: Cronenberg did not do Eraserhead. That was David Lynch. But we get where you're coming from when you talk body horror. Yes.
Wait, David Lynch? Are you sure